hopefully pretty soon.
It'll feel wrong if you don't count us down, Sue.
You're such a dork. Before I do that, then I will, as soon as you go live, I'll go out to Facebook and post that we're having technical issues and that there will be a recording after a while.
Okay. All right. So
Are you ready?
We are ready. You gotta. We need like
2.
one of those clacker things.
Okay, well, you make one and you mail it to me and I'll use it, okay?
Elsie, do it. You got it sitting there?
You know, I have a very expensive clacker, but we don't need that. We just need a.
All right.
We could just.
There. Go.
Action.
Action. I don't think you're supposed to say action. Nick, you're in the production world right now,
So
right?
what you say is the director will say audio speeds, and then the audio guy will hit record, and then he says speeding, and then the clacker, or then he'll say video speeds, and then same thing, and then you call it out, and then he.
That's more than we need for here tonight, I think.
Just a lot.
We're not shooting a movie. This isn't a movie, so.
Right. This would be almost like a vlog type of thing, right? Anyway, okay, I'm hitting the record button. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to Battle Buddies Almost Live this evening. Had some technical difficulties, 404 Zoom error for whatever reason is going on. So we've got a few special guests with us today, and your normal 3 that are here. We've got Sue and Pete. If you guys want to introduce yourselves quick, and then we'll go around. We'll go Matt, Mitch, then old Millsy. We got too many M's here this evening. We need to balance the power out a little bit. I feel overwhelmed. So, Pete, Sue.
Hey, I'm Pete. I 23 years combined active duty and Air Guard service in the Air Force, and I'm a resume resource for the group.
Miss Sue?
Sue.
Sorry, trying to create our post. I'm Sue Reger. I worked with Chuck at Accenture, still working at Accenture. I just hang out and help where I can.
Matt, do you want to go a little deeper in your background and talk about what you've done here when you were on, like, I don't think, probably 2 months ago now? A little bit of that?
Sure. I can go ahead. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Durkee. I have 10 years in the Army from 1990 to 99. Desert Shield Desert Storm vet. So I just recently finished my master's in military psychology in April, and I'm in a doctoral program for community counseling traumatology. My focus is on the student veteran transition process and how that looks like within the community college. So my thesis was actually the topic we're talking about, transition, and what are the resources. And some of the, what we call the scholarship work that I focus on is what we call the biopsychosocial spiritual model of transition. And I do a lot of conferences, or I'm starting to get into the conferences right now. So, and my doctoral program is tough. It's really tough. A ton of reading, and being a critical thinker and trying to think outside of a lot of things. So I do have a lot of focus in the military psychology. My training is what we call the Adlerian psychology from Adler University, and we focus on the resiliency model and positive psychology. So if anybody has questions about that, feel free to, hit me up. Thank you.
Mitch.
Okay, I've been in the Air Force 4 years, and then I did Air Force Reserves up here in the cities for 3 years as an airvac medic. Active, I was an aircraft mechanic. And then I did 4 years in the Army Reserve down in Faribault. My background is married 20 years and then divorced. I did some pretty extensive recovery work, went through CD treatment at Prodigal House, became a house manager there for 5 years, 6 years before they closed it down. And then I was over at Union Gospel Mission in the discipleship program, and then chauffeured railroad crews around. I live at Fort Snelling here in Minnesota, and I'm just kind of in a holding pattern right now with my life, which is why I came here tonight.
Cool. Millsy.
Hey everybody, I'm Melzy. So I was in the Army from 2002. I transitioned out in 2016. I deployed twice, both times to Iraq. Uh, Also El Salvador, been around the world and back again. Um, I'm here to talk about some of the transitioning opportunities for veterans when you get out. There's so much to know and so much to learn about. But hopefully we can get some good dialogue going on. Currently, I'm finishing my degree in digital film and media production. So hopefully when I get out, I'll be able to work with a production company, post audio, post editing and stuff like that with film. And hopefully get picked up with veteran TV. That's my goal anyway, but we'll see if anybody has a plug out there. But yeah, so I should be graduating here probably in the next year or so. Look forward to it.
You know what? I would like to have you talk about your transition and the things that you've discovered with education, because, you know, I got out in 97, about the same time as Matt over there. And I know that the education benefits and everything have changed significantly. So do you want to kind of talk about the path that you walked with
Yes,
education?
for sure. So I used the rest of my post 9/11 GI Bill. When I first got out, I went to a trade school, kind of a shake and bake HVAC course. I love heating, air conditioning. So if that's your route you'd want to take, they have, if you look through, you could contact the VA or your VSO, Veteran Service Officer, and they have a lot of resources, but trades are really good as far as financials go. I was making 6 digits when I first started. Unfortunately, where I fell off is my injuries from when I was in the military did not help me very well when, you know, you kind of need to be a little flexible. So some of those things you want to think about. And then when I transitioned over, I only had about a year left on my post 9/11 GI Bill. So what I needed to do is go to Voc Rehab and talk to them. You basically go through a process of meeting with them. They give you kind of a skills and aptitude test. It's pretty generalized test to kind of, they want to make sure that they're not setting you up for failure is what it really boils down to. And so once you've accomplished those goals, then they work through the program and they'll pay for all of the rest of your schooling. Housing allowance, I get that, as well as you know, on top of the disability stuff. So they pay for your entire schooling as well. So that if you don't have your Montgomery GI Bill or you've used it and you need to continue on with education, maybe you're like me, the job you were working in for X amount of years, it's just wearing and tearing down on you because of your disabilities while you served. Definitely highly recommend having a meeting with the Voc Rehab, and they're very, very helpful. At least the ones at Fort Snelling and Minneapolis are. And not to also, they gave me a brand new computer for school. They'll hook you up with a tablet too, because a lot of the classes are online now. So folks need to be able to be in Zoom meetings and do online schooling as well. So I transitioned to digital video and media production because that's what I've always had an interest in. And I believe that anybody, if you have the opportunity to you know, jump out and do what you love to do. And so what I've learned so far, I've taken speech classes and stuff like that. And, you know, when Chuck talks about interviewing and stuff, I might have a little input there as well. So I'm always available for questions and stuff.
Do you want to make a plug for the Warrior team?
Sure. Yeah. There's so
something to do, right? You got to stay distracted and have a purpose. So
you need a purpose. Absolutely. Kind of backstory, back in 2010, I was stationed in Germany, Kaiserslautern. My wife at the time had left me, and it can be kind of lonesome when you just move to a different country and you're still kind of getting to meet people and know the community. So I ended up finding hockey out there. I grew up playing, and since I played out there, I found a team here that was all combat veterans. The Warrior program started here in Minnesota. Well, it kind of started in Washington, D.C., but the actual program that's spread out now has pretty much started here in Minnesota. Now there's 3 teams in Minnesota: St. Cloud, Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's Michigan teams, Illinois, Kansas City, Texas, all across the country. It's just growing and growing. There is if you look up Warrior hockey, and then you might even need to type in veteran Warrior hockey, and you'll find we have private groups that you can join and ask questions and things like that. So if you've never played before, or if you've played pro, we accept everybody. You have to have a minimum of a 10% disability to play, but it's all free. And if you can't afford gear, we'll get it for you, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. Why do I like it? Because I get to go hang out with other combat like-minded veterans. And it's usually a good time. We always, before COVID, every year we would travel to a state that's hosting a veteran huge Warrior competition, and it's very competitive, but it's also a lot of fun. A couple of years ago we were in Tampa, Florida, which was kind of cool. Being from Minnesota, I like to get out in the sun a little bit. Detroit, I think next year it's going to be here in Minnesota, but it's been in California, all over. And then on top of that, there's other veteran hockey programs going throughout the system too. There's always a tournament in Vegas every year. Not this year, obviously, but usually there's a tournament in Vegas for all levels of play, and stuff like that. So it's kind of a huge community, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you got me involved in it. I've been having a blast. I mean, I'm an old guy. I'm 48. I got thrown into the boards pretty hard 2 Thursdays ago. You missed that because you weren't at that morning practice. But another thing, too, about what Nick's talking about with gear. If you guys need gear, if you've got kids or family members and you need a hookup on rugby gear, football gear, baseball, hockey, any of the stuff, this company that Nick's talking about, they outfit all vets and their families. So reach out to us. We can get you guys down the right path for that. Give you a purpose. If you're having a tough time getting cleats for your kids or whatever, they just need to know what you need, and they'll send them out. It's amazing. I walked through the warehouse, and I mean, it was like crazy. I mean, we spent a half hour in there.
I got some golf clubs.
Yeah, you got golf clubs too, didn't you? I forgot about.
Yeah, and then if you have a loved one or a husband or wife that deploys, they'll actually pay for all your kids to all their sporting needs and everything. And even if they're not deployed, if they are veteran, you can ask Shane or one of us to ask Shane. And 9 times out of 10, if he's got the funds, that's what it's meant for. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So. Sorry. So that's, the purpose, right? Right, Matt? That's a big thing, is the purpose. Mitch, do you want to kind of talk about some of the stuff that you've encountered, and we'll just kind of have a little roundtable discussion with stuff we've all gone through, and have a good open forum tonight for everybody to listen to?
Could you kind of ask me some questions or whatever to help pull it out? I really don't know where to start.
Well, so like when you got out of the active duty or the Air Force the first time, when you were a young fella, I don't want to date you at all, but things were different then, right? The internet wasn't as prominent as it is these days. But
non-Arab vet. I'm a non-Arab vet. I just turned 65, and when I got out, I was stationed first out at Pearson Field, Colorado Springs, supporting the Air Force Academy and ADC and NORAD. Then I went over to England, and in the process between leaving Pearson Field, I was still an airman second class or first class, and just gotten promoted to a sergeant at that time in the Air Force. And I went from to the front line with F-111s and bright candlesticks, and served on the alert pad for a couple months, which was kind of very surreal for me at 21 years old to wondering why we got these planes here, knowing that when the double gates open, more than likely the Russian missiles would be coming in from around England. And then I went home and tried to fit back into the family, the home farm scene. And one of the challenges that I had was that my dad, and I just found this out from my sister here a couple years ago, but my dad has this thing of talking to his children like they're 14 to 16 years old. And I wanted to have a talk with him to adult. However, he was never able to do that. And back then, as such, I went from social use of weed to medicated use of weed. Basically went into depression, not knowing what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go back home and farm. So I struggled through college down at Waseca for 2 years or 6 years for a 2-year degree, got a degree in sales and marketing. And my ex-wife had medical problems after our son was born, like strokes, seizures, and then fibromyalgia. So I worked for Kraft General Foods on the line, cleaning, sanitation, and warehousing. The warehousing part was for 5 years, and then between the work and family conflicts, I was asked to resign and collect unemployment, and then that eventually turned over to AFDC because it was cheaper for the county to have me stay at home than to have a personal care attendant. And this has led to a lot of my frustration. I have pressure washed hog barns growing up on a hog farm. And when I was laid off, and then back in '99, we had a family acquaintance that introduced my ex-wife to the whole cyber sex scene back in '99 when the whole internet scene started. And she got involved with that, and one thing led to the other, and child protection got involved in our life, and I was asked to leave the family because of verbal, mental, emotional abuse. And I decided to go out and do some pretty extensive recovery work for 6 years of 5+ meetings a week for 9 to 10 months out of the year. For those 6 years, I went through treatment, got to be a house manager for 6 years. So yeah, it's not been the life I wanted when I graduated from high school, but it's like one of the things back about 2003, there was a movie that came out that was called The Butterfly Effect, about a college student that was able to go back and make different choices in life and have a different present. But what he discovered was that the present wasn't necessarily better. You know, it was different. So it's like I just have kind of surrendered to my God, my understanding as to where I need to be next for what he wants out of me in life.
Well, I have to say, you have a lot of typical challenges that I see that have been in your life, kind of all in one fella instead of across several, right?
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, no, that's the way I see it anyways. I'm sure Matt's got plenty of stuff to respond to, because this is you are literally talking about the path that Matt is on to make sure that these kinds of things that you went through don't happen to the vets that are coming behind us. So,
amen. And,
yeah.
Yeah. So I know I appreciate that story. Thank you. And it actually sounds like almost every other story I've heard in some form. The one thing I would say is that every veteran, their story is unique. We're not going to pigeonhole it and make it say it's everybody's story. It's your story. So that's the narrative there. What I will say though is that a lot of times when veterans do get out, they have, we have a sense of what we call the loss and grief. You can almost call it the grief process, because we go into a form of a certain system, and then we get out, we're expected to go right back in and understand a new system. And it's the civilian system. And so we don't understand it. It's going to be in a nutshell, because when we go in the military, we're psychologically programmed to follow rules. We're given task, conditions, standards. We follow through on it. And then when we get out, from my example, when I went to college, I dropped out in a community college the first time. I dropped out another time when I was at the university. I just recently, like I said, I graduated my master's, but it actually took somebody to support me. The thing is that realistic perspective when we get out. And when people tell you that, they say the job skills or the skills you learn in the military are going to transpose into the civilian world, they don't. Because when you go into the civilian world, they're going to expect you to start at the bottom. But even though we're older adults, they're going to take those and say, okay, oh, this is great, you've done this, we expect this. But the realistic perspective is that they don't. So we get into what we call the cycle. And the three cycles I can see where for you are the biological and psychological cycle, where psychologically, you're getting bombarded with all this negative stuff from the biological arena, the social arena around you, and affects you to the point where sometimes you say, oh God, I'm just going to accept it. This is my life. Screw this type thing. I'm just going to move forward and I'm not going to get out. And that's the tough part, because once we go down that what we call the rabbit hole, it's hard to get out. It's so tough to get out. And it's that really tough to pull yourself out of that rabbit hole. The biggest thing that I've learned and that I've seen is that when we get out, we need to be realistic about our skills. Since I work with a lot of student veterans, I have to sit down and talk to student veterans and say, what are your skill sets? I work at a college. So what are the skill sets? What's going to be transferable in credits? And the other thing too, the colleges have to understand that a veteran is not not an 18-year-old, not a returning adult back into the system of education. They are an older adult that has real world experiences that may conflict with the educational or the philosophies that they're going to be learning in education. That's how I can relate it to. When you go to a job, you're going to compete with somebody who's maybe 5-10 years younger than you for the same position, and you're going to be like, oh God, I did this. I was a sergeant, a commander. I was the NCOIC of my Bradley, but that correlate to being maybe a shift leader or something like that, or things. A lot of jobs in the civilian world look at education. They look at the experience in education, and that's what they want. And that's the toughest thing for a lot of veterans to see. So there's that trauma. The other trauma factor is what I touched upon, was the sense of grief. It's a sense of loss. I bet you all of us we'll tell our stories about what we did in the military. The funny things we did. Me drinking beer, trying to climb up the barracks on the outside at the 82nd at Fort Bragg, doing the beer runs with, climbing up thinking, oh God, or rappelling down, and things like that we talk about. But it's that sense of loss, that huge, deep sense of loss that some of us can't internalize yet. So and it's going to be a spectrum of movements where we'll eventually work on it, internalize it, and move forward. So there's a lot. I could keep talking a lot about this. This is actually very fascinating to hear these stories. It seems to correlate. I bet we can all relate to it. So
where I've seen this disconnect come in a lot, Matt, is we get these younger captains that they're coming out of West Point or some other high speed, low drag place, Captain 03 for Navy guys. And they're told that you're a commander, you're a director. When you get out, the world's going to be waiting for you, passing out, job or not job applications, but funny, like my Post-it notes here, that they're going to be lined up for you. And they have this preconceived notion that's inaccurate, that their military experience is equivalent to civilian experience. And what's been really interesting, and the Army, I think all branches of service now have this fellowship program that's out there. And Pete and Sue have seen this in front of us. We've had a couple of these guys that are 30-ish that they come in and they're like, my goodness, when I went through working for PepsiCo or whatever it was, my eyes were opened. I wasn't ready. And I'm glad I got that 6 months. So that shock of, especially infantry guys or other combat arms guys, you got a real tight team, and when it's trigger time, it's trigger time. You don't have to second guess if dude left and right of you has got your back, right? And then you get into the civilian world and you're pulling knives out of your back 24/7. People, those knives that they stick in your back are actually climbing devices for that person on your left and right. And, it's really confusing when the world to you from 17, 18 on to 25 or 40, whatever it happens to be, doesn't operate like that. Your neurology has changed to trust. And all of a sudden you're in a trustless environment, or limited trust is probably a more corporate way to put it, right? I probably shouldn't even say that at all, but
you actually hit you definitely hit everything that the experiences. We, the saying is IGY6, I got your 6. We've all heard that saying. It rings true because there's all these memes or mantras saying that your comrades or the people are thicker than family, because like you said, the people that are out here they don't understand that we're part of that 6% that has joined, and the rest of them don't understand the military perspective. However, us 6%, I actually have been fighting this process where people say, people that join the military, the best, the brightest, and the smartest, and the best. I'm going to negate that. I barely graduated from high school. I was in a gang. The only reason I joined the Army was so I wouldn't go to jail and do that. I wasn't the best or the brightest. I needed an escape, but I was smart enough to know that this was an escape and that the military is going to give me resources if I understood how to use them, if I didn't get in trouble, and give me the money to move forward. That's the thing. So when people say, people always say we recruit the best, brightest, and smartest. Maybe, but it's the people that have a self-knowledge that they want to get out of a situation or do something better than what they are in now. However, that's the transition process. It can do it. One thing that I've been communicating with the VA and is the TAPS program. And this is where I would say within the TAPS, when I went through myself and Chuck, you can probably remember, we wanted to get out as quickly as possible. We wanted to get out. I mean, I should have sat there with my medical records, 201 files, and gone through it with a fine tooth pick, and said, yes, I got injured here in training. I got hearing loss. Here's my documentation. But I was at Fort Irwin, so I wanted to get out of Fort Irwin. I wanted to come back home as fast as possible without thinking about it, and I wanted to get my life moving forward. I had these great plans, great ideas. The VA and the DoD are starting to realize maybe we need what we call life coaches for an extensive period of time. That's why they started the Wounded Warrior barracks at Fort Lewis. That's why they do these things, to extend and support the people that are transitioning out when they ETS out. And there should be a thing also with the VA, DoD hands over to the VA, where they can connect to somebody in the rural areas, or just connect with them, like maybe once every 3 months, check in. How's it going? I see that, you did this, and you started college or something like that. They don't do that yet, but that's something that can be done, I think.
So
can I chime in on that?
yeah, do it, Nick.
So a couple things. So one thing I noticed, I'm 36. I've graduated 2 NCO academies, right?
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I breezed through the NCO academies, but college, man, it's a totally different beast. It's a different element. But like one thing I've noticed, even if I take an L in a class, right, or do really bad, it doesn't mean I should just give up. And you just got to, like any bad habit, you just got to keep pushing forward and keep trying. And you might have bad days, but then you're gonna have another good day. So just pick it back up. Don't give up. Voc Rehab, they are supposed to continuously every quarter have meetings with you and go over your grades. And they're supposed to, while you're going through school, they're supposed to keep track, obviously, with everything going on. Again, it's not happening right now as it was normally intended to. I'm sure it will get back to that. So, but that is part of their program, is to provide you feedback and constructive criticism as you push forward in your goals, because ultimately they want to set you free and hopefully bring you back to some sort of normalcy. So, and as I understand it, it's really difficult for veterans right now, having to sit at home, and isolate and stuff like that. It's not helping anything. So that is super unfortunate. So you got to just try to figure out ways to get out, get creative. I used to be really terrible at completing projects around my home. And when I was talking to a counselor, he said, just focus on one thing at a time. If you need to clean, if you have 4 rooms that need to be cleaned, focus on one and then move to the next project and the next. Just don't even think about any of the other stuff. And I tried it and it did work. It actually, I noticed that I was able to push through and stuff like that. And then you can equate that to all elements and things goals you're trying to achieve, whether it be weight loss and stuff like that.
A planner, guys. A planner's critical.
Yeah, you got to write it down. You got to speak it. You got to talk. You got to say it out loud. Helps, all that stuff. So
that's called a transference of skill. You took something that you learned, because I went through PLDC in the Army as well too. It's called transference of skill, where you've taken something and you knew what your schedule was, and you transpose that into what your class schedule is. A lot of times, a lot of veterans, though, they don't do that. And that's because the support is kind of lacking. Like, I'm assuming that your college has a veterans coordinator, a school certifying official.
Mine particularly does not. They have one guy that's kind of like the guy that does it all, but he's kind of learning as he goes. And, but most schools, I believe, like bigger schools, most of them do have some sort of coordinator that works directly with the VA and in the VA benefits.
You would be surprised. In fact,
oh really?
Yeah, you would actually be surprised.
Okay.
I won't say which college, but they're looking for a director for veterans for their campus, their 2 campuses. And I asked him why now, because after the post 9/11 and after about 5 years, the research and study said there was going to be about an increase of students coming in that are veterans. And the processes was that they had a survey done, and they realized that the student veterans are underrepresented. They had a certifying official that was not a veteran. They had student veterans there, but there was no coordination. There was no people talking about peer mentoring or talking about programs to get them connected. The research and the data shows that a student veteran will be highly successful at that university college if they feel socially connected to that institution. A lot of research has said that if a veteran is connected socially, and I mean socially, with activities that are beyond the education, they will succeed, right? And more so and stuff. So when I told them this, they were really shocked about the statistics and the data that I was telling them about and saying, look, this has been proven. Why did it take almost 20 years for you guys to figure this out when a few others are doing this? I mean, you're right. There are some educational institutions doing this, but there has to be a point person. So when veterans come in there, they can say, hey, look, oh, there's another veteran. Yes, there's a place where I can have coffee. I can have a bowl of ramen. That's what we provide. We have a guy who's a veterans coordinator and school certifying official. There's 2 of them at the college I work at. They also have a veterans lounge where anybody, not just a veteran, but anybody can sit down. They have computer labs. They have desks. They have tables. You can shoot the breeze there. You can hang out there all day, do your homework. You can get support, or you can get an advisor to talk to you. And then we also have people that are connected to outside resources in the community, growing veterans, farm to boots, where a lot of these people do work studies on this veterans farm program, and they're feeling connected within the community. So that is being shown to help with the transition process, because now they're feeling socially connected to that institution.
Sure. I think I work a lot better in team environments, i.e. like a classroom. One thing with like the film stuff, it's so quasi-military. It's insane. It's like I swapped out a rifle for a camera, and everything when you're on a production team, everything, how you communicate with one another on the team, it's almost like I'm on, back in the military. That's why I love it. And a lot of folks don't know that, but I think that all stems way, way, way back from the 40s after World War II, and the film industry kind of took off. A lot of the people that started it had military service at the time, and so they kind of just took what they knew and implemented that too. So it's really interesting how they do that. And there's, there'll be a lot of work out there, despite what people may think. If you're willing to relocate and things like that. So, but you also got to want it too. I mean, but I think that's with any career path you choose.
So Matt, I have a question for you, since we're kind of in your realm here this evening. The image of the veteran, okay? Different times now than when you and I were on active duty. But still the same fellas, right? I had an interesting conversation with a cousin of mine who owns a pretty decent sized company. And, I was explaining to him that vets are really good laborers for his industry that he's in. He's in a utility company, pays real well, treats them right. And he disagreed with me wholeheartedly. So, well, Sue, I see the perplexed look on your face. And I mean, I could give you several incidents where they've called me to ask me to swoop in and help. Some of them have been really good reasons to, like an honorable type of thing. But other things have been like, what's happening? What? Can you say that again? And it doesn't ever shock me, because it's not the first time I've handled these situations. But I'm just curious what you get for feedback with the things that you see with your research that you're doing right now, that the mindset of the transition from an employer perspective. I think we got it from the college perspective, but do you have background on the employer side of the house?
From my own personal experience, what I would say is, and people I've heard, when a veteran gets a job, they want to do the work, do it, get it done, and go. But unfortunately, a lot of times within the work environment, you also have to create relationships within the work. And sometimes there's all this banter that you may not understand, or some people are not dynamically focused, or some people just don't want to do this. And then they'll be shrugged off. And eventually what happens is that boils over, because if you think about the military mindset, when you're in a squad or a team, you have somebody who's the leader, the NCOIC. You've got somebody who's the assistant NCOIC, the assistant squad leader. You got the 50 gunner, you got the mortar guy, you also got the EOD guy and whatnot, depending on the squad formations. But they have a mission that they do. When you go to work, a lot of times a lot of things overlap, or people are just standing around because even in heavy industrial construction, you do work, but it's not like you're pulling a lot of muscles. Hard labor, don't get me wrong, but it's long term, and there's a lot of for lack of a better word, BS going on. And when you say you're a veteran, you are still considered the outsider. So that's the extent of what I know about that. There is, I mean, from my own personal experience working, I did get frustrated because when I see a task to be done, I just go ahead and straight, I want to do it now. I mean, I set a schedule and do it and then try to get it done. But again, it's waiting for other people and just the waiting, and it's like, God, this sucks. Or just other people do it wrong, and they don't get in trouble for it, or they get paid more and whatnot. So yeah.
So I know one of the things that a lot of the guys that I've seen for vets, they struggle with is we're typically used to really strong leaders. And we understand the pecking order, right? Like you said, you got the guy in charge, his sidekick, and then there's the rest of the team that are, crafts people on, the 50 or the IT server stuff or whatever the nerd stuff is these guys do today.
Are you talking chain of command?
Yeah. I'm trying to keep it. I try to disconnect from as much vet talk as possible. There's a lot of stuff that you guys say these days. I'm like super lost. I even get accused of not being a vet, which I take as a compliment and not, but it tells me I've transitioned better than I think that I have. I lost my train of thought here. Oh, I'm sorry. I remember what it was. So I think one of the things that's a really important takeaway is in the civilian world, it's actually expect soft leadership, real soft. Expect that I would almost say it's like a cadet showing up that's going to be your boss. That's that kid who's 20 years old, who's going through OCS, or he might be at airborne school at Benning or whatever, and he's 20, and it's like, dude, seriously, get out of here. He's that kid. He's that annoying little barking dog. So you're going to have more leaders like that more often than you probably realize.
Hey, Chuck.
That's okay.
Hey, Chuck, you actually remind me something about the leadership model. The military is what we call the hierarchical model of leadership in the ecological perspective. The hierarchical is that we know who our leaders are. We expect them to lead us and know the missions and the jobs and everything, and be able to teach us that. What you talked about the soft leaders is what we call the collaborative leadership model. I'm actually studying about that in my community psychology class right now for the program. And there's 3 different types of leadership models. One is the collaborative, where everybody has a voice. You have a soft leader, and they do the input, and you try to do committees upon committees upon committees. There's shared governance. Mm-hmm. The term is called shared governance, where everybody has an input, and you have to go through committees upon committees, or people say yes, yes, yes. And that's the bureaucracy of it too. Whereas a lot of times when we want something done, we'll go, hey, Sarge, I want this done. Okay, do you have this? Roger that. Move forward. Go and do it. But now it's not like that, because now we're in a world where, for a sense or a lack, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. And we also have to be in a position where we have to understand everybody's perspective. So they call that the collaborative leadership model, or the shared governance. So it's hard for veterans, because if you tell a veteran, if you tell them at the farm, I want you to go to this and work on this, this row, dig me a hole 6 inches down to put the seed, and give me about, 2 inches apart all the way down, they're going to do it. But then also, if you tell somebody, and they're going to say, why does it have to be 2 inches? What is the best practice? What is all this? What can we get the research and the data that shows maybe we got this? Or why can't, or does it have to be in the shade, or how much water are we going to add? They're going to ask 50 billion questions, and you're just like, I was told I want to just do this, and everybody else is going to have their input.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, one of the things I see on the Facebook page, I hear in person, is it's the nobody gets me, right? It's the why does the world operate like this? Remember, guys, you are 95% of the world is not you from a vet perspective. You know, you're a very small subset of a subset of a subset of 50 other subsets. You know, if you want to, you know, you got the vet status itself, but then if you want to look at all the cultural differences of all the other stuff that's out there, how you identify as these days, it's a big, messy pot. So just be accepting of what you're walking into, and your life will be a hell of a lot better. And don't expect the world to adapt to you. That's a big one that I see, is why the hell doesn't anybody get me? You guys get me. Well, you're probably dysfunctional. That's probably the common thread that we all have, right? We can say the weirdest stuff. It's funny, I'll put stuff up on Facebook and only my vet buddies get what I'm doing, or my perspective, or the weird stuff that's going on in the back of my brain. It's just the way it is. So my cousins don't get it. You know, my friends from back home don't get it. So just accept that they won't get it, and your life, I think, gets easier, personally.
So a veteran is, a lot of times, a lot of veterans don't consider themselves a minority status, but a veteran is considered a minority status because of the fact that there's only a few of us. With that said, that like you said, you're right, Chuck. When we come out, the expectation is that people don't understand us, and therein lies that what we call the disconnect. We can talk to each other, but the people here don't understand what we're talking about. I can say, you know, hey, Milton, check your 6. You got something behind you. Oh, wait, my bad. Or, you know what, walk 50 clicks and jump off the roof, you know, blank, blank, blank. We're joking. But a lot of people be like, oh, my God, you are offensive. So we have to check the languages and the terminology now. And that's tough for us because we're so ingrained and brained with a certain language and motivational languages that when we talk to other people, they're just like, dude, you're angry. For my example, I'm on the campus diversity at the college. I teach equity and inclusion, do seminars like that. I get accused of doing what we call microaggression sometimes.
Yeah.
I get accused of that, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. You know, I apologize. I did not mean to be microaggression on certain things because some of the language that we use is a little harsher. And so I have to check that and learn. Funny story, and I will use this. I'm a Korean adoptee. I was actually at the seminar at University of Washington for transracial adoptees. And my mind's going there. I was like, okay, I mean, I went to the seminar because it just talked about the adoption, and the 2 students came up and said, so what do you think of transration and what's your feeling? And I worked as a homeless housing case manager. Said, I have a lot of respect for the people there, you know, that go through the identity issues, and I have a lot of respect. And my wife is poking me going, Matt, you're a transracial adoptee because I'm from Korea. I grew up in a white family, hence the term transracial. So there's a lot of verbiage that is new out there for a lot of us to process in the civilian world. And it changes all the time. And I make those mistakes left and right. I call myself a Korean adoptee because using all these new terminologies, it confuses me. Even higher academia sometimes when I have to be, you know, talk, you know, a certain language, it confuses me all the time.
Okay, so I want to get wrapped up here for the evening. I don't want to run over too much. Does anyone have any last thoughts that they want to throw out to our almost 50,000 vets who need to be inviting other vets to get some of this information out here? I mean, to have someone like Matt here, guys, is huge, is critical. This guy's a subject matter expert. They call him Smeeze, okay? So get more people's asses in here so they can listen to Matt. I don't care if they listen to me. Listen to Matt. He knows what he's talking about. But sorry, anybody else got anything on the wrap up? Pete, Millsy, Sue?
Well, at the risk of having already spoken too much, no, I just want to say, keep reaching out to this resource, Battle Buddies page. I've seen people get help across the whole spectrum of needs from this page. People who had no idea where to turn to and how to start their job search, or where they would go, what they would do, and just they don't feel alone. So definitely you guys hang tight with this page. There's always new gold coming. Tonight was no exception. And thank Matt for joining us too. And Millsy.
Remember, you guys, you're not alone.
Correct.
I'm just gonna say thank you, everybody, and we're always learning together, because even though my research isn't a lot of this, all of us have our. Remember earlier, I said all of us have our unique stories. We're learning, so I would never say I'm a subject matter. I'm learning as well as everybody else, because I go through my own processes of being a veteran all the time, and how I walk that path, and the dualities of the two worlds that I live in all the time. So I just want to say thank you. This has been great, and it's actually healing for me too. So I appreciate that from everybody here.
Hey, Matt, choose lead the way, right?
Let's save that for another hour somewhere else where everybody can hooah and hoorah and oh yay or whatever the Navy guys say. And where's my caviar for you Air Force fellas? Mitch, any last words for you out of you that you want to make sure that our guys hear?
No, I found it very interesting too, just sharing and being acknowledged, and some of what you're saying about transition. Back in 1985, I had written a newspaper article about Vietnam vet coming back. And one of the things I put in their closing was, just as they have a basic training going in, they need a basic training coming out. And I heard that
advanced training on that.
What?
Advanced training on getting out.
Well,
you're
but to help make the transition, because basically one of my problems is I was basically the equivalent of the executive officer to my dad when I was in high school, his confidant, his hired hand, the third parent. And then when I got out, I was being treated like I was just back in basic training, and that sucked.
Yeah. Yep, that's pretty normal. Okay, well, hey, thanks everybody for joining in and contributing tonight. Even Millsy, the hockey player, that's fantastic for you to show up this evening. So have a good evening, Battle Buddies. Appreciate you listening. Adios.